then people join and people join.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, welcome everyone to talk about the human-centric future and listen to our presentation on that. The next 57 minutes to be precise, agenda is here, and we will have a short introductions of ourselves and really brief introduction of the topic of the human centricity and overall, and then after that we'll cover 4 different perspectives of human centricity, and let's have also some discussions. We'll wish to get your comments and questions to the chat, but we'll cover the questions after we've gone through the 4 different perspectives, so and the latter part of the presentations. But few words about who's here speaking.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Laura Leskelä. I'm a human-centric strategist. I've been working in agencies for multiple years, covering different roles in brand strategy and business design. I'm super passionate about the future, what the future holds, humanity, all things human, and how to utilize empathy as a force of building and driving better business. That's me in a nutshell. Roope.
Quite of a nutshell. So my name is Roope Ruotsalainen. Nice to meet you all. I'm the CEO of a business design agency, Frankly Partners, and recent years especially been working a lot with brands and cultures, organizations, how to transform those into customer-centric and human-centric. So one might guess that today's topic is quite close to my heart.
So we'll start with the topic. We will really, maybe it's not a minute introduction, but we'll try to keep it brief since it's a huge and very holistic topic. But what we'll go through before moving on to the perspectives is how we see human centricity. What is the transformation or evolution from customer centricity to human centricity? Customer centricity, we might think is an old thing, but it's not here yet. It's mentioned in most strategy papers. It's mentioned in most sales decks that we as consultants or agencies do. But most of the C-level executives and leaders do not completely understand what it means, all the elements or areas that it entails, or what it really takes for an organization of different shape and size to be customer-centric. It's also a relatively new concept if we think of a bigger timeline. Still 10 years ago, if you suggested to a C-level leader that planning should be done customer first, not systems first, they were maybe looking at you with slight amusement and disbelief. But customer centricity is here, and even noted publications such as Tietoviikko have covered articles about this novelty in recent times. But we see that time's really up for most of the organizations. Learning to be customer-centric is not enough anymore. We really have the imperative as organizations and as brands to become more human-centrics. We see that if organizations don't transform to human centricity, they're going to vanish and die. Many of them, especially now after or during the COVID-19 pandemic, have become vulnerable and are already wheezing. And we really see that getting to the why people use us, why people love our brands, why people choose to be loyal to us is the key. And that's actually the epitome of the change from customer centricity to human centricity. We really, really need to get beyond the traditional notion of consumerism or thinking of our target groups or people as customers. We really need to start seeing them as people. This is a brief timeline on how we see the evolution of thoughts around customer centricity or human centricity. If we think of customer or human centricity as terms, They themselves do not feel like a novelty, and it seems like the concept has been around for multiple decades, although we know that many industries and companies still struggle with implementing these concepts or notions or guidelines for thinking fully to their business. If we start from the 50s, already Peter Drucker outlined the basic foundations of customers who are humans, being the ones that determine what a business actually is, what it produces, and whether the business will prosper or not. But in the 70s, shareholder capitalism, introduced by Friedman, took over, and businesses were more prone to focus on short-term profits, often neglecting the customers and more optimizing on products and processes. It was actually only in the early 2010s when customers again entered the picture, with a few professors, example here, Martin, who espoused a new age of customer capitalism, where companies that put customers first would create even greater value for the shareholders. He was not actually taking issue with Friedman's basic assertion of shareholder capitalism, but more pointing out that its practical application had gone wrong throughout the decades, and that the blind pursuit of shareholder value had devolved primarily into managing investor earnings expectations. Although a few agreed with Martin back in 2010, after 2015-ish, there's been an increasing consensus on customer experience as the future competitive advantage. The system and its implications to humanity, humans, and the world has really begun to be criticized more and more as well. Financial Times has, for example, dedicated an entire section to save the future of free enterprise with what they term as responsible capitalism. Business Roundtable, a very influential institution in the US, has redefined the purpose of the firm to serve the society and humanity more. And for example, in the World Economic Forum in 2020 in Davos, the discussion circulated really heavily around more sustainable forms of capitalism. So what we see in the timeline is that more and more we're entering a time where not only customers, but humanity and humans are put in the center of businesses. And short-term improvements are actually challenged with a longer-term perspective. So basically, individualistic actions of companies or organizations are put against the more collective good. So we see a transformation going from maybe me to we, and from my life and my life context to the world's context. An interesting discussion now that you see in the timeline as well is about to revolve around customer centricity and human centricity. What does or do the two terms mean, and does it really matter if we talk about customers or humans? Because if we think of customers, we usually portray them as humans after all, even if they're B2B customers, it can be a bit more difficult. And the whole discussion might sound trivial, it might sound nonsense, it might sound consultancy jargon, or kind of like just trying to outsmart each other. But how we see the topic is that semantics, so words, actually do matter, because the words that we use makes us do and think differently about things. And it also enables us to approach concepts from different mindsets and perspectives. We as leaders and businesses have really, as said, traveled through different centricities, but if you taste the words product, customer, human, you see an evolution really both on a contextual and on a conceptual level. And why does the evolution that we see here, moving from product-centric to customer-centric to human-centric companies, matter? Is that we see it as choices. Do the companies focus on products or customers, or do they take a larger stand for things that matter to human beings or the world as a larger entity? Do companies focus on ecosystem or the direct environment that they're playing in, or do they take a larger stance in the world? Customer and human centricity, as we see here, also include kind of a paradox, kind of a two-way paradox, because if you think of customer centricity and customer-centric companies aiming to improve their business by smoothing customer journeys, we would kind of imply blindly following, for example, customer data that is often historic data. And if we base decisions solely on them without taking the larger surrounding world into account, we actually might go against commonwealth. So when we look at the transformation or evolution from product to customer to human-centric companies, we actually see an evolution towards being more courageous than ever, daring to stand out, daring to do difficult choices, daring to interpret the future without necessarily having explicit data backing it up, and daring to sacrifice sole short-term profits backed up by the short-term data in order to actually drive longer-term growth. To summarize this very brief intro, as said, of a huge and wide topic, we claim in this presentation that human-centric business is a very complex system. B, it includes internal and external perspectives of a business. And C includes perspectives and elements yet unknown and still to be explored. And that is why in this presentation, we only aim to tackle 4 interesting perspectives of human-centric business. You see the perspectives here, and this is our today's talk agenda or outline in brief. We will cover 4 different perspectives and elements of human-centric business. And the first one is the world. So do companies actually have the courage to stand out or drive change in the world? The second one hops onto the internal side of direction and how to make people willing to do the work and actually participate in the journey of the vision that we have set. The third one covers skin touch. How do we aim to solve problems of the humans we want to deal with? How to be close enough to understand and solve the right problems. And fourth perspective considers action. So how do we actually build a human-centric organization that is just to succeed?
So let's get started with our first perspective, that is about the world and the big picture there. I think that we all agree also in this phone call that our planet, that is rather unique, really must be saved. But let's talk a little bit why a purpose is really a hoax. So, throughout the times, people have really needed some kind of simple explanation to the complicated issues. Moreover, throughout the times, people also needed something to follow and something to have faith in. So if you are looking into history and human behavior perspective, human beings simply need the reason why a thunder strikes or why the rivers are flooding and so on. So in those earlier than medieval times, the religious institutions utilized this kind of a really primitive human need extremely well. When they made business by selling you a spot from the heaven. However, since the science began to explain the thunders and lightnings, the business of faith transformed from threatening with the hell, kind of providing hope to people. Again, those businesses of faith managed to utilize it pretty well. There is a say that even in an atheist country, there are no atheists in trenches. If you think in a way that the war really is an ultimatum in the front line, even a person who is a deep atheist turns to have faith in something, because human being simply needs faith and human being needs a purpose. So the simplicity there is that some institutions, some companies, some businesses are better at making money of it and money with the purpose. So we indeed live in times where people are soaring for the faith, probably faith for the really existential things of our planet. And I guess that everybody can also agree based on the facts that the capacity of this planet is about to end. And even the strongholds of the capitalism, like Financial Times, are recognizing that the capitalism, as Brits or Americans used to know capitalism, really must change. So companies do need to take care of this planet. So for sure, there is a space for the purpose, but and you know, I believe that most of us as an agency people, as consultants, have been preaching about the purpose now for like 10 years or something. However, the purpose talk itself has plenty of problems because the purpose itself is really a hoax. And why that is that Jim Stengel, who found out the idea of the purpose, didn't really study the causality. First of all, Stengel studied companies and tried to figure out that what unified the succeeding ones. And well, he thought back in the 2011 that it's a purpose. But there is the actual problem that historical data doesn't really predict the future. It doesn't tell what's going to happen. 6 years after Stengel's study, only one third of those Stengel's companies were actually doing well or were outperforming the Standard & Poor 500 list that he was comparing at. So you know, others, those are 2/3 of the Stengel companies, those are average shit. You know, the purpose really didn't help them. It's not helping them today at all. Another example, you know, purpose is being sold, like consultants, marketing people are selling the purpose as some kind of ultimate relief to the success, but that also is really a bullshit. If you are looking at what sells, it's much more pragmatic. For example, weapons are selling much better than shoes. If you are seeing the stock exchange, yeah, now Nike, for example, outperforms still the Standard & Poor's 500 list, but if you look a little bit other business figures like turnover and ability to make profit. For example, Lockheed Martin is much bigger company than Nike and actually making much better returns than Nike. So you know, it's big argument that is really purpose something that is driving the revenue and profits on a scale. At least there's not data really backing it up same way as Jim Stengel is claiming. That still doesn't mean that we wouldn't need purpose or that purpose wouldn't bring some money, and especially it doesn't mean that companies wouldn't need to do good. That's of course totally different issue. Because another example why purpose is a bit problematic is that there are plenty of companies with beautiful purposes, like Patagonia being one classic example that I guess that everyone here on this call for sure knows. Everybody in marketing industry probably keeps this company as one of the wet dreams to work for. But you know, let's admit that some of the topics are much easier to find some catchy and nice stories to talk about purpose. If your product happens to be a hiking equipment or high clothes for outdoors, your stories and everything you do is built around nature, and you actually happen to produce your high quality stuff already in an expensive country, not really using the child labor of Pakistan, it's much easier to build some kind of communication purpose or marketing communication based things there. Or if you are a laundry detergent brand selling the idea that kids should be dirty instead of keep on continuing washing their clothes, you know, that's just Marcom. It's not about better product. It's not about, you know, changing the organization, or it's not about doing some real good. So most of the purpose talk that we actually encounter in our everyday lives, it's more about marketing communication. It's not real action where businesses would start to make some dramatic changes on their operations. But of course, there are good examples of good companies as well. First of all, if you think some domestic examples like Neste, classic oil refinery, is being an oil refinery good business or not? It brings money, but it's not good for the nature. But they have done turning into bioenergy company. It's not an oil refinery anymore. They have changed their strategy. They have changed their products, and not only their marketing communications. It's something that comes then much later onwards. Or another example, if you think about Google and Google Ventures, it's one of the most interesting and biggest prominent future revenue generators of the Google venture was Boston Dynamics. Google invested in that robotics company pretty long time ago in the big hopes of that the future logistics would be really changed by the robots that the Boston Dynamics are doing. Well, what happened is that Boston Dynamics made indeed great robots. They actually made a bit too great robots. They made killer robots, and Google's one of the main values is that don't be evil. It's one of the things guiding them. And then again, thinking no investor in this world would have sold their share of Boston Dynamics. It's already creating revenue, but especially it's one of the companies in the world that are most prominent defense industry, high successors in even quite near future. But actually Google did different. They sold the company. They were really true to their purpose. They got, of course, plenty of money selling the company to the Chinese investors, but at the same time, they refused about 100 times more of the future incomes compared to what they got by selling the company. So they are good guys. The main question is that are the businesses really ready yet to sacrifice maximizing their growth or profit for the sustainability to make something better, to make a better world for human beings and really to be a human-centric in that sense? Is the whole business really ready to make a difference in their products, to organize around their purpose and really to change their strategy? That is the big question. We are we are not sure if companies are ready. Most of them are not. Hopefully more of them would be. But the fact is that the companies must actually do the change, because there are basically two ways how the world can change. It can change through voting, or it can change through buying behavior. And as unfortunately we have seen with the dictators like Putin, Maduro, Assad or Hitler, one cannot really trust on the voting behavior of human beings. So people really actually make awkward choices when voting, as this family gallery might be showing us. So it's the money that's changed the world, and that's why we need to push our clients and our companies actually to use it better, and we have to push the consumers to use it better.
So the second perspective, as said, moves again from the external perspective to the internal one, and it's about the direction. It's about, being dropped into the woods and having no idea to go. And when this happens, you most likely end up like severely sunburned and eventually starve. And the same applies to, of course, businesses, because we all need a direction, and especially the larger the organization, naturally we need more people to actually get on board and fulfill or execute the journey towards that vision with us. So if you think of strategy in the most simplistic matter, a vision is the future of the business or organization that we believe in and that we want to work towards, and a strategy is a plan of how we actually then get there. And emphasis here on the words how we get there, because that's the most difficult thing, as we both, or at least we both, and I assume that most of you know, because that inherently involves humans. On average, 50% of strategy execution processes fail. The range in the scientific studies studying or observing this varies from 9% to 90%. So the varying range is quite wide, but if we do a generalization, half of all visions that we carefully craft in boardrooms and in management team meetings actually remain in some part or the other unrealized. And why is that? We try to break it down in the next slides with a few clusters of reasons. The first 4 reasons that you see on this slide evidently have to do with not knowing why we're changing and not having anyone to actually lead the change. We've probably all been either guiding or participating in a strategy process where the value seems to be just making a change of some sort. So we end up in this cycle of wanting to craft and fulfill change, but we don't actually know what we're doing it for. It's just for renewal, for something nice, for something new to show and tell the organization. And this is the problem. When we make a change of some sort, we do not know why we're suggesting the change. And oftentimes, the strategies are crafted in management teams, boardrooms, without the actual organization, the humans within that organization involved. And there we bump into the first and most important problem, because then the lower levels of the organization, middle management, the expert in the organization actually doing the work, having no clue what the change is about and why it's in the journey that we should all do and go on together. And when people don't know what's going on, it's really, really difficult to actually focus on understanding your own role in that change, or actually committing to the changes to be made in order to reach the vision, especially on an individual or on a smaller team level. And if there's no focus from a level high enough in change, there's no leadership responsibility driving the change forward. Just obviously focusing on communicating how the strategy is crafted, why the decisions are made, why the selections are made and prioritized are not enough either. As organizations that are crafted out of human beings get more and more allergic to kind of this traditional paternalistic way of communicating strategies from top down, the real change actually lies in organizational culture, which, you know, in its purest sense is actually humans interacting and engaging with each other. And culture isn't something that is either born overnight or something that can be handed over by the leaders involved. Doctoring culture is not possible unless, you know, a culture is formed by the very individuals in that organization. So doctoring culture is really not a solution to drive change. Culture is born within, crafted through the individuals in the organization, and culture is a very kind of like fragile living and breathing organism that either has the opportunity or possibility to make the firm or actually break the firm. And of course, you know, change always needs resources, and resources usually need investment. And investing in the change. People need to be empowered to actually do the change in the grassroots level. They need to be given the tools, they need to be given the mandate, they need to be given the time to change, and change really easily without these resources and without these investments made to the people or for the people to succeed gets lost in the timeline. It gets lost in the everyday, it gets buried in the, you know, the hustle and bustle and acute operative things that you need to deliver. So if we cluster the things from the previous slide and this slide, so the most common reasons for strategy execution to fail, it actually boils down to kind of like, in short, to lacking and considering the human aspects of change, communicating the sense of urgency, communicating the reasoning behind the change, actually giving people the capacity to deliver and following through with actions. It's so much easier to kind of like be in the strategy process and new strategy hype and to forget all the things than actually hold accountable and deliver constantly. So how does behavior actually change then? I think a lot of, at least consultants that are dealing with change management and strategy consulting have become familiar with, for example, these terms you see in the screen that are actually borrowed from behavioral economics. A lot of companies have started now to look towards behavioral science in improving strategic decision-making, employee and customer satisfaction, and strategy execution that actually is followed by performance and excellency in delivery. Many of the words on the screen are borrowed or more familiar from, for example, political and behavioral science, but they all imply gently guiding masses of people or groups of people towards making incrementally better decisions, although they have entered the corporate world semi-recently, maybe 10-ish or in the 10-ish year sphere. Nudging, the action of, while allowing complete freedom of choice, gently pushing people towards options that are seemed more favorable by, for example, presenting them as more easy or more fun. One of the most classic examples being in Sweden, where an organization tried to push people to take the stairs instead of the lifts and turned the stairs into piano keyboard that would make noise, so that actually climbing the stairs would be fun. So this is an example of a gentle nudge towards, favorable behavior that drives the change that we want to do. Gradualism refers to breaking things down to pieces, because as we know, a roadmap with stages and prioritized steps is way more easy to execute than an unorganized to-do list of a pile of post-its just lying in your table waiting to be done, because it gives it structure, it gives its priority, and it breaks the change down into more easily understandable phases. One of the most interesting and recent thoughts is that of atomic habits, which, as the words imply, mean that great changes are actually made by like deconstructing the changes into small habitual changes. And the author or implier of this actually said that there's a law of 1%, where actually if one person, individuals do a 1% change towards the wanted goal, it accumulates slowly. So it goes again back to the idea of gradualism, of executing and accomplishing or achieving big goals by just doing minor mini steps towards the direction or towards the desired direction as a group. And a lot of these are also linked to building habits or building changes that are linked to your identity. And this again comes back to the culture issue and the power of the organizational culture in fulfilling visions or achieving change within an organization. It's actually the greatest engine within a group of people, although it's so intangible and difficult to grasp. A good example of culture and culture's power to execute or drive through big strategic transformation is the one of Netflix. That is one of the companies that has the most strictly defined cultural manifesto and guideline, actually breaking generic values like passion or patience into concrete to-do lists, or kind of like into concrete guidelines on what we expect or assume from our people. And this is also crucial in their onboarding and already in the recruitment process. If a person doesn't mentally feel ready of ticking all the boxes, they're not the right cultural fit. And I think the cultural engine and the cultural transformation power of Netflix, having been around since the very early days of the now entertainment giant, is one part explaining its transformative power that you see, for example, on the left side of the screen, where we look at the top 20 transformation based on business results in the Standard & Poor's 500 and Forbes Global list, where Netflix, having done first the huge strategic transformation from being a video rental company to an on-demand entertainment platform, and then moving from distributing others' content to an actual entertainment production powerhouse, and being able to do that in a sustainable way when it comes to business and when it comes to developing their organization. I'm going to continue with perspective 3, so I'm going to have a bit of a monologue moment here. Perspective 3 then again goes back to the framework and to the external side. It's about skin touch, and it's about a claim of businesses dying without empathy. If we think of empathy as a word, empathy means getting, understanding people, having compassion, understanding what other people are experiencing, being aware, being sensitive to feelings, thoughts, experiences that might be completely outside of your own sphere. Empathy in business maybe entered the lingo from design thinking or the design thinking world, and from, for example, service design, but has gotten kind of like a huge foothold, especially when it comes to driving sustainable and human-centric innovation processes in companies. It is linked to improving creativity while innovating. It is linked to improving success in negotiations internally with clients. It's linked to higher leadership performance. It links to also developing in organizations over time. So again, empathy, like organizational culture, is not something you can instill or drop down, and that is then injected and integrated to the organization, but it's something more of like a evolving organism within that group of people. The reasons for practicing empathy in business and in its different forms is evident when it comes to the actual business results and crafting better experiences for humans. This is a collection of a few results picked or handpicked from different kinds of studies circulating the World Wide Web, where, for example, empathy is seen as the biggest or most common denominator in actually launching successful product innovations, costing hundreds of billions for average brands if not executed, costing results in customer satisfaction and the willingness to recommend the brand, product, service, or company to a peer is something that is commonly overestimated by the organizations themselves. Even as much as 80% of the organizations see themselves as empathic, even though the customer results or the success of the product or service launches do not back it up. But when practiced, and especially when used to drive loyalty, give you great returns when it comes to business success. Companies, being empathic loyalty leaders, growing almost 2.5 times faster than their industry peers and delivering multiple times more shareholder returns over longer periods of time. So again, we see the kind of like switch in mindset from short-term profits to longer-term success of a business or a brand. Well, why is empathizing with customers so difficult then? It's difficult because we approach research maybe in a bit of an old-fashioned manner and bump into the common problem that data is actually just as good as the questions you ask from the data. And humans are just as authentic as you let them be as research objects, if we utilize very kind of like this, very, how do you say it? What's the word? Can't find the word. Anyway, humans are just as authentic as you let them be. And this, it's not something that is excluded when you start practicing design thinking or design-driven methodologies. Just adding co-creation to the mix of methodologies utilized when empathizing with your customers is not equal to groundbreaking innovations. You really, really need to think outside of the box in how you frame the research question, how you approach the humans, how you set the stage for that research problem or question or hypothesis to be solved. And also how you give the tools to people to actually talk and tell and portray their experience in as authentic form as possible. So basically, true empathy really requires seeing beyond the apparent answers. And we all know this, or at least I think many of us know this problem. For example, basic quantitative research, where we easily bump into itsestäänselvyyksiin. Things that are, kind of feel given, because those are the things that when we look at averages are, truths that are confirmed. But this is really not enough. It's not enough to anticipate the future of your business or your brand by making assumptions based on the past or making assumptions based on traditional research methodologies. You really, in order to live as an empathetic or empathic business, developing your product or service portfolio in a human-centric manner, you need to be brave enough to go and breathe the same air as the humans that you claim to be your customers. You need to take risks. When you look at research methodologies or ways of framing problems, you need to be willing to experiment. You need to be willing to detour when something's not working. And you really need to take the responsibility of inventing new ways of empathizing with your customers that you should know best. There is, of course, like a paradox on what level of empathy is too much. This is a recent article, actually I think it was published maybe last week in Fast Company, where the journalist covers a story about Apple, who has kind of gone by Steve Jobs' basic philosophy of making technology and user interfaces as simple as possible until now. Because now they're going for mass customization on different markets and with different customer groups by handing over the freedom of creating the perfect design to the actual users. And I think this is a really interesting and current example, which I don't have an answer to, but that is a discussion that I'm going to follow closely on whether now the millions and billions of people utilizing Apple products and being kind of like used to having that preset, very simplistic form, embrace the opportunity to actually craft their own Apple user interface, or find it difficult and hard and create a backlash. So this is an example of an interesting topic to be followed. Of course, future of empathizing, future of getting skin deep and in skin touch to the customers means a lot for customer insight, human understanding, or research as we know it. Now we are most likely to move from isolated case-by-case data sets to more open source data platforms. The ones controlling the data or gathering the data are not so much research companies doing the isolated tests, but tech giants, delivering the data to their clients and platforms. We're probably seeing a shift in isolated academia and academic research towards a more cross-industry and business academic cross-collaborative efforts in solving the problems that are only getting trickier and trickier by the minute because the world is becoming so complex. And of course, there are the advancements in technologies that will drive and transform the way we are used to seeing, empathizing with customers, the way we're used to breaking research projects or empathy projects or co-creation projects into pieces. Because things like artificial intelligence will take over, for example, probably the hypothesis phase will take over a lot of the manual pre and analysis work. And that will drive the last row, which I think is the most important row when it comes to the future of human-centric business and the role that empathy has in it. And that is the significant change of market researchers actually being or becoming and evolving into human whisperers and human empathizers that are relentless in going beyond the first apparent answers and actually willing to go skin deep with the customers, with the tools and methodologies needed.
So if we still jump into the fourth perspective, that is how to take then the action and how to make the human whisperers to really function in the organizations. So let's talk a little bit about the organizations and how do we act actually as human beings as part of them. So when we talk about human-centric organization, we often probably the first idea is kind of a leadership by pampering, that super duper empathy should be always put on the every single individual employee that is like trying to craft a place where people could be raised and kept in pumpulio or whatever that it is in English, in a soft box without noises heard. But this is really much actually bullshit in a way that weak people probably need pampering. High performance tends to come in many different shapes, and the key point there is that we actually really have to understand that what are the cultural denominants there on the background and which kind of culture our people, our high performers are really living in. Harvard Business Review had a great study about the different organization types and different high-performing people types, and this is a study that you actually really recommend for everyone reading. It gives like 8 archetypes of different cultures, of which names and colors you can see there. For example, caring, that focuses on relationships and mutual trust. It's a place that culture that tries to create a welcoming place where people help and support each other. And then again, if you think something totally different, like authority-denominated cultures that are defined by strength and decisiveness and boldness, and they are environments where people might be also quite competitive. Now, the interesting there in different cultures and different ways of building the organization is that all of these different culture archetypes might be or could be driven by customer centricity and especially human centricity. They are just driven and functioning their different ways. So the first step is to understand that when you are designing your own human-centric organization, step 1 is to understand that where your people are coming at, which kind of culture they would like to be living at. Then another perspective when talking about human-centric cultures is also to think about self-guiding organization. Human-centric culture doesn't necessarily equal self-guidance, but really often they actually do go hand in hand. Typically high-performance organizations, and especially organization where the seniority pyramid is kind of upside down, that you have more of a seniors than juniors, they tend to be self-guided, and there are of course plenty of pros and cons in self-guided organizations, but pros for those are, for example, having higher productivity and in overall happiness in the organization. However, self-guided organizations might be really hell places as well. Kelsey Piha summarized it really well, that when looking at the public discussion of self-guided organization, it seems that they are either kind of holacracy hells or autonomous heavens or complete messes, or then anti-fragile living organisms. So the big question there is that why some cultures do fail and why some cultures that are self-guided manage then to flourish where others not. From there, a great example of good culture also that managed to live well is Spotify. It's a great example of an organization that is balancing between being autonomous and accountable. Here, the essential counterweight to autonomy is strict accountability for results and for the actions and behaviors that deliver those results. So if you give freedom to people, you actually have to make them accountable. Business is not a kindergarten unless you are a Touhula and you make business out of running kindergartens. That was a lousy one. So then one might ask that what this kind of journey actually takes, that where to start and how to transform your organization into a human-centric one. The three first steps are that, first of all, you have to define how the three teams, how individual people, how teams are creating value, and to whom actually they are creating value. What is the tangible or non-tangible value that they create as being a team? Then the second thing is to find together the ways of working. The team has to craft themselves that how should they be working actually in order to create that value for someone. And then again, later there comes the time to define the structure, the leadership and roles in order to use then the copy paste and create the systematic movement all around. But the key question, of course, is that how to push that kind of change through. The most typical failure is to focus on the too large masses in the organization, human centricity, or kind of smaller data, the customer centricity. That kind of changes really don't go through if you don't start to push correct people to make change. So the problem here is that if we are focusing in our own organization in the larger masses, the problem is that the early and late maturity, being like those 68%, they want to be safe. They are cynical and they are practical. They want to do things that are safe. They don't want to change. They don't necessarily want to be the people who are driving the human centricity on overall. So to push the change through, what we need to do is to get the people involved who are in the first 13.5%, so the early adapters. So at the end of the day, what you probably want to do as the first thing when pushing the human centricity forward in your organization is to create accountability and autonomy. Freedom comes with responsibility, and it's also about leadership. You cannot micromanage people, you cannot push things through management, but it takes a totally different thing to really have a true leadership. And when it comes to leadership, that is then time and topic for another 1 hour talk, how to be a good leader. But these were the 4 different perspectives that we wanted to cover, that bit different perspectives on what we believe that human-centric business is. As Laura said at the beginning, that human-centric business is also plenty of other things, but it's at least these 4 things.
And I think we're on the journey of figuring out the whole living organism of human-centric business, and therefore want to really participate you in the discussion as well. So we're very open to all kinds of comments through all kinds of channels, LinkedIn, email, and others.
So if you have any questions now, please do drop them. There's Jenny who has been asking, do you see any difference in the things you're speaking about when it comes to B2C and B2B industries? And the comment was made quite early in the show. If talking about what happens with these questions and answers. So I've been personally working quite a bit with both, and recently also with the large B2B multinational industries, and then again with the consumer giants. I think there are actually not that many differences when it comes to human centricity. Something that unifies actually for example, my clients, it's not really whether they are in B2C or B2B or what is the industry, but it's more about the attitude of the C-level or the really high top management. Is that, do they really want to change how the company is? Do they want to create a kind of living organism out of the company and push the human centricity through? That is actually much bigger common denominator between those companies rather than actually being a B2B or B2C. How you then again push the human centricity through in B2B or B2C, that might obviously vary depending on the more of the industry.
Yeah, I fully agree. I fully agree with the notion of, humans being humans, whether they are, businesses making business with consumers or businesses making business with other businesses. My favorite saying goes, B2B is not boring to boring. It should be human to human as well. But as Roope said, maybe the attitude towards changing, the resilience in making the change, especially the bigger the organization gets, and the resilience in drilling the basic principles or guidelines in thinking in a human-centric manner throughout the organization. Barry.
So then Essi was asking their question, how do your clients react to this difference between customer centricity and human centricity? Is it easy for them to grasp the idea? It is pretty difficult.
Yeah,
because
it is pretty difficult.
Most of the clients are still struggling with the idea that they should be customer centric. It might be easier sometimes to talk about customer centricity and then employee experience. But then again, the reason why we didn't want to talk about the employee experience in this presentation is that human centricity is something much bigger than those two linked together.
And I think human centricity, as we saw on the slide, if you remember the evolution of the concept and context of the different centrisms, I think at least for me, the whole notion of human centricity is actually quite new and kind of in its early stages. It entails a lot of the different themes that we have been used to talking when we talk about customer centricity or organizational change and employee experience, as Roope said. But as we stated earlier, semantics matter, and I think that, kind of gradually evolving from customer centricity towards human centricity, as said, forces us to widen the context and widen how we approach developing our businesses and understanding the humans that we are attempting to serve.
Yeah, one practical thing also there to add, that where clients are getting this thing of human centricity is that in big corporations especially, you need to be talking to big different audiences in a way that when it goes to the internal parts like employee experience type of things, usually the clients are like HR directors or similar, or people who have the HR function underneath them. So that's also that is still in the old structures, that there are no specific people for the human centricity.
Yeah. We are already time's up, but we'll try to maybe answer Ingrid's question in a minute. Ingrid asks, do you believe that the steep change that companies need to be focused more on the human being and to invest in change that our planet needs right now is a change from the capitalist system to a different one? I think there are interesting notions about responsible capitalism or sustainable capitalism that have been widely discussed. For example, in Davos this year in the World Economic Forum, and those summarize the discussion way better than I can ever do in 1 minute, but I don't see it as a change in the system. I see it as an evolution of the system and how we evaluate, for example, as investors, how we evaluate corporations and companies and brands and their financial success, and what kind of things we give more weight to than previously.
Yeah, that is a pretty good summary. I totally agree, and my personal view on that actually really big and complicated topic is that honestly, if you think that what it would take that our current monetary system, our current way of doing business would change, it would take actually a huge revolution. In a way that revolutions happen through big negative things like wars and such things. And personally, at least, I hope that we don't have to first witness that kind of a negative revolution in order to get into a greener and better planet. And I definitely actually hope that things happen through evolution, so that
it's like gradual
improvements.
Yeah. But that was all of the questions. We thank you for your time. We hope that our talk was insightful to all the participants online. And as said, if you have anything to comment or to contribute to the discussions, you can find us on LinkedIn and
many
via
other
emails
platforms.
And many other platforms. So don't be shy to approach us. We're more than happy to talk. But from our behalf, thank you so much for tuning in and listening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And have a great day.
Great to have you on board, and wish you enjoy a sunny summer.
Yes.
At least we will.